window and what happens?
Do
Mhm.
you um when you say you're glad these groups are not going just to stay out of potential harm's way, was that?
They're home or they're staying home. I don't think they need to be there with what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
It's all very frightening to me as to what and who and all that other stuff.
yeah, and just to take note of this, this was not without consequences for Israel. I mean,
Right.
there were a lot of buildings destroyed. There were dozens of deaths. There was, I'm sure, terror start to finish because there were times during the bombing when there was an all clear, and then almost minutes later, there was another alarm, and people had to make a U-turn and go back to their shelters. So I agree with you. Maybe this isn't the right time to think about visiting Israel. My wife and I were thinking about we have to be in London late in the year, and we were thinking about a side trip to Egypt up and down the Nile. And I'm thinking, you know what? I don't think this is the right time to be thinking about a vacation into the Middle East. So I commiserate with you there. Um, Harv, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, let's start with what the head of the Joint Chief of Staff said the day of the bombing of the Iran nuclear sites. He said it's going to take a while to get a real assessment of the damage. And that's our view, the US view. And I think that's probably truthful. He just said it, without Trump telling him what to say. And he's an Air Force general, so he's probably used to these assessments, and it'll take a while. The Israelis, however, the next day said that the stuff was all destroyed. And the Israelis would probably be in a better position to know what happened given their Mossad and their intelligence, probably a lot better than ours. And if they're saying it set the program back a couple of years, maybe we'll know in a month or two what's going on. In the meantime, Israel is going back to normal. They've issued like an all clear. They must know a lot more than we do as far as what the existing threats are, and they don't seem to be scared at all. That's the upside. As far as our fearless leader goes, I don't think he has a clue. I really don't. Uh, I think the military plans were made under Biden and Obama. And so the military plans were probably pretty solid. And I think there was damage done to the Iranian nuclear sites. How much, I don't know. But in the near future, you're going to see Iran crack down on all the moderates. That government's afraid of what might happen to them next. And I think that gives you a real clue of what really happened there. They wouldn't have this big crackdown if they were the big winners of everything. They wouldn't have to worry about their population, especially the more moderate ones. So overall, I think Israel probably got what they wanted. Who knows for sure? Uh, and I'll continue to kind of listen to what Israel has to say. I kind of felt over the last 12 days like I was Francis Scott Key, looking at Fort McHenry when I was looking at Tel Aviv to see if it was still there.
Mm.
And that's the way I felt at the time. But now I think I feel a lot better about what happened. And I'm not giving a lot of credit to our fearless leader on this. I think the military over the years have come up with a plan. I think is the Israeli Secret Service has done a wonderful job, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, you touched on a couple of points that I've been thinking about. One is, I think if you take absent the names of the two countries at war, if you put any two countries in the same situation with the same objectives, I don't know how within a minute and a half you can make an assertion that this was destroyed, this survived, it's going to take them this long to recover or that long to recover. That's number one. Number two, there has been no explicit explanation about what exactly was destroyed. I mean, there was the two components of all this are the fuel, which ultimately leads to bomb-making material, and the mechanisms for producing all the essential elements of their nuclear program. We don't know what has been left standing and what's been destroyed. I think there's credible evidence that the Iranians, who are not stupid people, knew that something was up. And my guess is, if I had to guess, I'm 51-49, that they moved the material out of there and put it somewhere else. I mean, this is a mountainous, barren region. Who knows where this stuff is? So there's that. So I think we're just not in a position to know exactly what's going on. And I think we do have the benefit of a ceasefire should it hold, and we'll see where this goes. I mean, Trump said a little while ago today that he's not even so sure they need an agreement. Well, I don't know where that
Yeah.
gets them, but uh, I don't know how this guy operates, in the traditional uh, foreign affairs capacity. I mean, he says things that are just sound so completely ridiculous, and rarely does he get to where he wants to get to without being a bully. I don't know. I'm just so skeptical about anything I hear until there's more credible evidence. Brad, you want to go?
No,
No.
I
Okay.
have nothing to add. It's all been said.
Well, maybe a little bit from a personal perspective. How does this make you feel after watching what you've watched for the last week or so?
Well, like you, I'm in a cloud, a fog. I have no idea what to think. Um, so I don't, how can I have an opinion when I don't know? That to me is the most troubling thing
Yeah.
about this is that I can't believe anything that comes out of this White House. So what am I to think? Yeah, I don't know. I'm just befuddled.
Okay, fair enough. I think that would describe a lot of us. Uh, Diane Mandel, do you want to weigh in on anything? You're muted. Would you join
Yeah.
us? Can't. Oh, there you
I'm
are.
just as confused as everybody else. We would all like to hear something that's actually we could hang our brain on that says, yes, that's real information. I I get angry at all the foolishness that's presented on the different channels, and I don't know which channel. Well, I don't know. Other people don't watch television, I guess. But if I flip channels and get different information, which one is believable? Probably nobody. Probably they're just talking with no real credible information.
Which channels do you flip around
I
to?
watched I listened to NPR this morning. I listened to Democracy Now, the PBS channel, and I kind of go around
Mhm.
to hear what's going on. I don't want to be stuck on one. Do you have a recommendation on
Well, I would stick with NPR for a while because they're not going to be here pretty soon.
what about PBS? Is it going to be staying
Same
on
thing. The public broadcast and public radio, they're under the gun now for cuts as part of the
money?
big, beautiful bill that Congress is wrangling over. But
Uh,
they're in the gun sights. I think it's hard to get an unbiased opinion straight down the line. I mean, I tend to watch CNN because it's not Fox and it's not MSNBC. I read BBC online because I think they give you they're a little bit removed. They're a little more dispassionate. Um, I read the forward for a Jewish perspective. Uh,
yes.
they tend to be they hyperventilate a little bit.
And
And
Israel Now, I listened to that one
uh,
also. I
I,
read it.
I think you're smart to kind of poke around and then come to some opinion that makes you feel comfortable. Although I don't know how anybody's opinion can make anybody feel comfortable right now. So I would encourage you to keep doing that. And, as long as PBS and NPR are still active, you can't go wrong listening to them.
So should I continue donating?
Oh, God. It's like when Jeff Bezos took over the Washington Post, so many people, subscribers, canceled their subscription. Well, okay, that's a protest vote. That makes sense. But on the other hand, it denies, credible journalists who don't work on the editorial section, work in the newsroom. That jeopardizes their standing. So, if it makes you feel good, sure. But I don't know if donating to anything that's got a connection to this administration is throwing money down a rat hole. I just don't know. I'm glad I don't have the money to contribute. Anybody? Boy, we have a small group today. Herb, go ahead.
I think that really not too much has changed. He's made the bunch of bombs have damaged a lot. They've rebuilt maybe. I understand from the New York Times that there is talk that there is a third site that has the same thing as the other ones to be able to refine uranium, and they don't know where that is at all. Plus the fact they were given so much notice before this that happening. Okay, they whatever was in this was it Fordo, and whoever else. Why not move it? What's the big deal? I'm going to go at what they think it is, but it isn't there. Who knows? So I don't think really much has changed, except maybe Netanyahu thinks it's wonderful. Iran has been attacked and we are now. What has changed? The United States is definitely on the side of Israel with our weapons as well.
It struck me. There's a great irony here. When Obama signed the deal with Iran, I don't know how many years ago was that? 10 years ago, maybe a few more years. Pardon me. It gave us some 15 years of somewhat certainty, at least more certainty than we've ever had. And at the end of the day, that left Iran with the ability to refine uranium for civil purposes at a very, very low degree. They have said they will never stop going back. They will never go down to zero. They will always maintain that they have the right to refine fuel to some degree. It seems to me that at the end of the line here, whether Trump gets an agreement or not, he's not going to get a deal that's going to be much different than the deal that was already in place. And so that leaves me wondering in a couple of different directions. So what have we achieved? And then I think when you really think through that, I think you have to move into the political considerations of what all this has meant. What does Trump want more than anything else in the whole world?
Nobel Peace
A
Prize.
Nobel Peace Prize. That's what he wants more than anything else in the world. And if he can convince his constituents and the world beyond that he is the great peacemaker, that he's brought some stability to this region that's been aflame for how many thousands of years, I think he in his mind, he has a legitimate case to make for the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, whether he gets it or not is secondary, but I think in his mind, I think he feels as though he deserves it. So that's the Trump perspective. What does Netanyahu want? Netanyahu wants to stay in power. And I think the only way he stays in power is if once more he proves himself resilient to all the forces in the neighborhood, that he has survived, that his country is intact, and especially if he can now turn to Gaza and get the hostages out and somehow make a deal to get Hamas out of there in some form or another, then he's returned to hero status in Israel. They can call for snap elections, and he'll be reelected. Um, and then lastly, the Iranians. What did they get? I was curious to read that everybody's declared themselves a winner in this. Iran says that, look, we threw a few, pardon me, we threw a few missiles at the U.S. base in Qatar, and so we stood up to the great Satan. Well, what does that do? That probably plays well on the Iranian street. That they know what they're doing. That it certainly undermines the ability of forces such as they are in their civil society to want to overturn this regime. I think that puts that off again for any number of years. Again, I apologize. So I don't, I just look at this. I don't know what anybody's gained by this, other than yeah, maybe they set their nuclear program back some months or years or who knows, but Osama bin Laden proved that evil forces in the Middle East play a long game. They can plot, they can sit and wait, they can wait for their opportunities, and they will extract whatever revenge they want to extract when they feel it's in their best interest and they can do it. So that's my little speech. Harvey, did you have your hand up for a second ago?
Well, I was going to ask you, how likely do you think it is that Netanyahu will call an election, say at the end of summer, beginning of winter, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm not sure when the next scheduled election is, but I know that his corruption charges are still hanging over his head. And I think the only way that he keeps them at bay is if he stays in office. So I think if he's riding high on the crest of hero worship, I think he would want to have that election sooner rather than later. And he certainly has the support of right wing Jewish Israel. And I don't know what happened to the secular left in Israel. I don't know. They don't even have a viable candidate who would offer a different way forward. So I don't know. It's hard to argue with that. I don't know how he could lose his position. Maybe he shouldn't. Um, anyway, let me see what else I have on my list today. It's not much because this was the only thing I've been thinking about. You know, I know they've made a lot of kind of.
Michael, can I just chime in for a second?
Oh, take as long as you want, so my throat can recover here.
I do think that Iran represents an existential threat to Israel. And I think Iran was weakened before this, and the Israelis saw an opportunity while Iran was weakened to deal with this nuclear issue. And the one thing that I find interesting is that, yes, I can't believe a word out of Trump, but Israel seems to be thinking that the job was done. And we know that more than those sites were those two or three sites were attacked. There were multiple attacks. And Israel seems to have penetrated the Iranian intelligence so deeply. If the stuff was moved, and apparently it's very simple, it's not that complicated to move it. It fits in, containers.
The way it was described to me was scuba gear style.
Scuba, yes, that's what I read. Scuba.
Yeah.
So, if they had that type of intelligence that could, which would, so that some of those attacks that we may not completely understand, but maybe those were directed in a knowing way at where these items were. I mean, maybe there was some success in this. So, I'm hopeful that they
I
were
get that.
successful, and I am amazed at the knowledge that Israel had about the locations of all of these key individuals. I mean, it's absolutely incredible how they were so precise in what they were doing. I mean, that is noteworthy, I think.
I think it's more than noteworthy. I think the early days of this war, when the reports came out that this scientist and this military leader and that guy and this guy, they were all killed in very specific locations in Israel, in Iran. I thought that was unbelievable. The intelligence of the Israeli Foreign Service is quite remarkable. Did any of you watch Fauda when it was on? Did any of you remember that show? It was based on Israel Mossad operations, and a lot of the people involved in writing it and producing it were former Israeli intelligence people. So it was an amazingly tense and relatively accurate portrayal of what these guys go through. So to me, that was the most impressive thing. I mean, if you know where the tunnel entrances are and you have these big bombs and you want to carry out these operations, okay, there's the hole, push the button, drop the bomb. I don't think there was a lot of genius that went into that. Although I applaud the whole operation, but to know what apartment and what room a nuclear scientist is in, to go in there and get rid of them, that was pretty remarkable to me. Sorry, I'm gonna put myself on mute. Sylvia, you go ahead. I'm gonna mute myself for a minute.
There was an article in the New York Times a couple weeks ago that Israel has infiltrated almost all of Iran. A lot of its spies are Iranians who hate the regime and are willing to share what they know. And they talked about some meeting a bunch of important people in Iran, and everybody was worried about which among them was the Israeli spy. So they know that it's there, and Israel is gathering information the way it knows how to, which is placing people in good spots who are willing to talk to them. It's not a secret, and Iran knows about it just as well as Israel knows about it.
Oops. I did read that the Iranians hanged um, an individual they suspected of being a Mossad agent. So there is danger to that. There's a great film a few years ago starring Sacha Baron Cohen, based on the true story of probably the most preeminent Israeli spy, a guy named, I forget his first name, Cohen was his last name, I think. Anyway, he was a spy in Damascus in the 50s and did enormous work for the Israelis. And then he was discovered and executed. But this stuff goes on. And they are really to be commended for the ability that they have to develop intelligence. Dee Dee Shulman, well, hang on, Brad. Dee Dee Shulman, we haven't heard from you. Do you want to weigh in? Maybe she's not here. No. Okay, go ahead, Brad.
Well, I had heard or I had read that, a number of months ago, Israel attacked various sites in Syria where I think they were radar types of facilities. And it's only now that we understand that that was all part of the plan. Because without those radar facilities in place, Iran did not know they couldn't see what was coming at them. They didn't have that information. because of the distance between Israel and Iran. So my point being, I think this has been planned for
without question.
quite a while, and they were going about it very, very methodically. First of all, reducing the role of Hezbollah in Lebanon, dealing with the Houthis, excuse me, dealing with Syria. These were all anticipatory steps in this goal of, I'm having lunch and I can hear you. Okay.
No, that I think you're exactly right. And when Trump said, I'll make a decision within 2 weeks, I knew that was such a farce because you can't scramble together what those guys did in 2 or 3 days or even 2 weeks. I mean, it takes enormous planning. And then they had the other B-2s going in the other direction as a diversionary tactic. And I don't know. Again, I have friends who have said to me that I applaud what the Israelis and the US did. To whatever degree they forestalled the Iranians and their nuclear ambition, it's great. It has been delayed to some degree. I just wish Trump wouldn't be the one to get credit for it. And I find, and I have to say that that's sort of how I felt. Um, if we had only been dealing with a guy who was reasonably straightforward with us from the first administration to this administration, how many lies did the Washington Post track in the first administration? Something like 30,000 lies through the course of the 4 years. So, I mean, trust isn't, I'm sorry, trust isn't a thought that I have with that guy. And I don't know. I'm glad it was sort of successful. We'll know more in the days to come, but I don't know. I just wish it. I kind of, I kind of wish it wasn't him. Will somebody please weigh in with some ideas? Because I'm having a look. Go ahead, Harv. Thanks.
Well, I keep on thinking in the back of my mind, it seems like Israel's and our goal was to knock out their nuclear program in Iran. But like you say, the regime is still there. And the question is, what do we do about the regime? Strategically, did we make a mistake going in after their nukes and not the regime? I don't know. I really don't. And I'm not a right-wing crazy warmonger or any of that. I just wonder strategically if you got this regime that's still in place that's going to cause problems no matter what, even if the amount of problems they're going to cause in the future may be diminished because of all this, they're still there. And my question is, what do we do now?
Yeah, I think a lot of people internationally and a lot of people in other countries would draw a line between it's okay to go after their nuclear program. It's not okay to affect a regime change. Um, Plus the fact we don't know who would replace that guy. It's like, they talk about, well, if something happened to Trump, great. What do we get? J.D. Vance. Well, is that an improvement? You got to be careful what you wish for. The Ayatollah is 86 years old. I don't know what kind of health he's in. I think you
I
have
don't
to.
think he's playing the long game. That's
Well,
my guess.
he may not be, but there has been talk that he's nominated like three possible successors, and we don't know what their politics are yet. We can imagine, but I don't know. I think you run the risk of international condemnation more if one of your objectives is to undo. Look what happened when the U.S. installed the Shah in the when was the late 50s or early 60s, and then that led to the Islamic Revolution. So you never know what's the next chapter. So I think, and I don't know how smart this administration is. I really don't. I don't know if they're good at tea leaves or game theory or anything else. Um, I'm so sorry about all this, but I haven't talked this much in 10 days. What do you think is going to happen with Gaza? Do you think this helps the Israelis with solving that, or it imperils it in some degree? Again, I don't know how this works. Any thoughts out there? No? Come on, Rose, you have some thoughts. Sylvia, I'm sorry. Sylvia, you have some ideas. You're on mute.
I know. I have absolutely no clue what's going on. They're continuing to destroy as much as they can. They're continuing to see the Gazans as something to be gotten rid of instead of something to be dealt with. I don't know if Netanyahu can conduct two wars at the same time in his head, because I dislike the man. Okay, I admit that. If he thinks that Iran for the moment is sort of solved or quiet or whatever, then he's going to go after Hamas, because that's still there. They're cracking down on the West Bank. They're destroying people's homes and lives because they feel like it. It's not going to change. And if he runs for re-election, he and his right-wing crazies are going to get re-elected, because they're running on a platform of only we can keep you safe, because everybody seems to have forgotten about the Hamas attack in the first place, which happened because Netanyahu's government wasn't paying proper attention. I have no idea. I do feel really, really sorry for the Palestinians. I really, really do. I felt very sorry for the Iranians, who were also, of course, a number of civilians were killed in the process of this wonderful operation. I don't know where it's going. I don't think it's ever going to be the slightest bit stable. I think maybe it'll have a veneer of not being actively hostile, but it's not ever going to be stable because the players don't really want it to be stable.
Yeah, as you were speaking, the thought hit me that, so what have we gained in the last 2 weeks? What's changed in a long, not a long term, but in a substantial way? What really has changed? And
I think it's gotten worse.
it's no better than status quo.
Right.
It's somewhere between status quo and worse, because there's it's like you've picked the scab off the wound, and now what? Are you going to let it heal, or are you going to just try to do something else?
Well, my biggest question is where is Trump going to go from here?
Mm.
I mean, he's already established who he wants to be. And what does he do with that power that's getting more and more tough to deal with? And the things he says and the things he is, I mean, where is the Senate? Where's the Congress on all of this? I mean, it's like, are they in his back pocket and they're afraid?
Oh, of
And
course.
where does
Yeah, I
any of
think
this
that's pretty
happen?
clear. I think that's pretty clear. I think this Congress has been AWOL from the start. I mean, to be on the verge of passing a bill that's purportedly going to cut spending and reduce the deficit, when in fact it's been scored to increase the deficit by trillions of dollars. I mean, what do you do with that? I mean, it's whatever he says. It's as if, he is sui generis among politicians. We all know that, but it's as if he has this reality in his head that if he says what it is in his head, that's what it is in reality, which is so easily refutable at every step along the way on every issue, foreign and domestic. So, as a country, what do you do with that? And, it's like, well, okay, the Republicans are totally compliant. Well, we all know that. Democrats can't get out of their own way. Which brings me to this other subject I want to just raise just for a second. The primary election in New York City yesterday was very, very interesting,
Mhm.
because the winner is a Muslim American, a handsome guy, smart guy. And my wife tells me that his mother is a renowned filmmaker who's made some amazing movies. I don't know what they are, but I'll take her word for it. But what strikes me is, does this have any, does this portend anything for the Democratic Party? And if you say, well, yeah, it shows how there are a lot of Democrats who want to go the progressive route, um, as opposed to more centrist Democrats, like the Biden kind of Democrats or the AOC kind of Democrats. And AOC and Bernie Sanders have been on this tour, this anti-oligarchy tour. Well, I would posit that, and I'm a big fan of AOC. I think she's a very talented young woman. I think she's smart. I think she calls them as she sees them. But at the end of the day, where has it gotten her, the Democratic Party? I mean, she's on the fringe with Bernie Sanders. I mean, as much as I may agree with a lot of things that Bernie Sanders stands for, um, I don't know that his primary election um, really helps the Democrats leading up to the midterms next year, because I think it's going to exacerbate this argument about which way should the party go. And I don't know any of your politics, which way you vote, although I can guess presidentially which way you go. But beyond that, I think it poses a real dilemma for the Democrats writ large nationally, because I don't. There's no clear path forward, and I don't know. He's certainly not the face of the Democrats across the country going forward. Sylvia, go ahead.
I think this was more a referendum on Andrew Cuomo.
Maybe.
He had to resign in disgrace as the governor. He was not good to New York City when he was governor. And I don't think, honestly, that it helped him that Bill Clinton endorsed him, because Bill Clinton is old hat with his own moral dilemmas. So I don't know really whether this was because they really wanted this cute young Muslim guy or whether they really didn't want Andrew Cuomo. I think it might have been more a vote against than a vote for.
It might be. I do think that Jewish Americans would be scratching their heads a little bit, not to throw that onto the criteria of consideration. But there's a lot of Jewish people who are distrustful of any Muslim, and that's not fair. That's really not fair. But feelings are feelings, and I don't know that helps Democrats necessarily with building a Jewish constituency at a time they've been losing a Jewish vote because for whatever reason. So I think his progress will be interesting to watch. And Cuomo's talking about running as an independent. Eric Adams is going to run again. So he's not a slam dunk, but he seems to be in a good position at the moment.
Well,
go ahead, Brad.
He also capitalized on an important issue, both to New Yorkers and to the rest of the country, which is the housing crisis. That's his background, and that's not that he's had many successes in dealing with it in his short career, but he tapped into an issue which is very, very much on the minds of many New Yorkers.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's such an important issue in every big city, especially those run by Democrats. Let's see. I've kind of exhausted my notes here. I think we're sort of at oh, there's one other thing about the Israeli situation I'm a little concerned about, and that is, and we haven't talked about this, what will happen in the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea and the shipping lanes? Whether if we've got the Iranians under control to some degree, will any of their proxies say, well, that doesn't apply to us. We'll do what we want to do. And that could be very disruptive. It could certainly be very disruptive to the world economy. And I was just so amazed how just since in the last, I don't know, 36 hours, gas prices have come back, or oil prices have come back down. And the stock market is going crazy again. To me, that represents such short-term thinking because it just, it just everything is up and down and up and down. But I don't know. That's something that I have in the back of my mind that I keep my eye on. That I'm a little concerned about to watch. Any other final thoughts? We have about 10 minutes left. Hart, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think the big player as far as that Gulf of Hormuz is China. I think they get 12% of their oil from Iran. And I know they don't want that Gulf of Hormuz closed. And I think they've told Iran that. At least that's what I've read.
Yeah.
So if it remains open, I think the Chinese are the ones who are pushing for this.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
And I think that's what they're worried about as far as the price of oil. They don't want it to go up anymore. That's for sure.
Right.
Where the Russians are on the other side, they want the price of oil to.
Yeah, the Russians have been conspicuous by their absence in all this, and I know they got their hands full with Ukraine, but boy, they haven't said a peep about any of this stuff, and that's a big question mark, an open-ended consideration, because they were natural allies of Iran, but they haven't really spoken up or done anything on their behalf. So that's another thing to keep an eye on.
They can't help Iran very much because they're busy using their own weapons and armor, whatever, in Ukraine. So if Iran asks for help, they're unlikely to get it. And Russia isn't going to offer something they're not going to give.
Yeah, and Trump just this morning, while he was at the NATO meeting, had a meeting with Zelensky, and he opened the door to possible more military help for Ukraine. I mean, he didn't say no, because of course that's all Zelensky ever asked for is more military help, and Trump didn't say no this time. So I don't know if that's because the European nations agreed in general to increase their military spending by 5%, up to 5% of GDP or whatever the measure is. But I do think that could portend a shift in that direction as well. And I don't know, Putin can't be too happy about that. And then what would that trigger from the Russians with regard to Iran? I don't know. I do think everything is connected worldwide. None of this stuff happens in a vacuum. And that's why I don't think the US right now are great game theory players. I mean, I've always been under the impression that Putin plays chess while Trump is playing checkers. And
more like tiddlywinks.
Yeah. So I don't know. I do think everything is connected. Okay. Any other final thoughts from anybody? I thought we would have had a huge group today because it's been so interesting what's going on, but it is summer and people have other plans than to listen to me drone on for an hour.
I
have to figure out why I changed my name.
Well, pick that up with Hannah Gore can help you there.
Michael, I've got to go, but I really appreciated today. I got a lot out of it. Thanks.
Good. I'm glad. Well, it's a good discussion because I'm always curious to hear how you
Thanks,
all
Michael.
feel about this stuff.
Very helpful.
All right. Well, stay well. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
You too. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.